Studios across Hollywood are firing employees, and while we take no joy in anyone losing their jobs, we have to say that it looks like the studios have learned a very hard lesson. No, we're not utterly optimistic, but it does seem as if a change is happening. A change is underway in entertainment, and that is that woke has gone broke. Folks, we're here to tell you that there's things happening, specifically with Amazon Prime Video, but also beyond with Pixar, that lead us to believe that perhaps DEI is dying.
Fly, you fools!
Happy day, folks. Welcome back to the Pro Channel. Happy to have each and every one of you joining us. We are talking about the Amazon Prime Video massive layoffs, which now join the Pixar layoffs. And all of this in spite of the fact that apparently Amazon Prime Video has clearly hurdled in front of Disney Plus, becoming the number 2 streaming service, at least in North America. And now, I suppose, Netflix and Amazon Prime Video in their own category of dominance. Disney Plus trailing greatly behind. Joining us today, LW Ghost, to talk about all of the entertainment news. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And here we are on thatparkplace.com, the website that if you are not yet bookmarked, you should be. And who's that handsome fellow over there? Valiant Renegade.
Oh, him too. Wow.
So our article today by John Trent, Reacher Season 2 premiere, defeats The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Season 1 debut dominates streaming charts. This is to set up this strange juxtaposition that we're seeing, Mr. Ghost, and that is that Amazon Prime Video is it's on fire. It's doing fantastic. But at the same time, they're also removing folks who worked on this success. Ostensibly, we'll come back to that in just a moment. Reacher Season 2 premiere defeats The Lord of the Rings. Here's the article by John Trent. Prime Video's Reacher Season 2 dominated the Nielsen streaming charts for its premiere week, toppling The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power's first season debut. Nielsen reported that the 3-episode debut of Reacher racked up 1.687 billion total minutes viewed. It took the top spot for the original streaming series, besting Netflix's The Crown, My Life with the Walter Boys, Obliterated, and Squid Game: The Challenge. It also bested School Spirits, Virgin River, Yu Yu Hakusho, which, by the way, we've heard from multiple people out there, they want us to cover Hakusho, World War II from the front lines, and Sweet Home. And if we take a look at this, Mr. Ghost, we see even further evidence that Disney has been completely eradicated by Prime Video and Netflix.
And
take a look at that. Disney Plus not anywhere to be found in the top 10 at all.
When you look at that chart, remember it says 11 episodes. That includes the first season, because there have only been 3 as of the time of this chart of the second season of Reacher.
Right. And do you suspect that there's a large number of people who go back and binge watch the first season in preparation?
Oh, sure. I think when they announced the second and people said, gee, this must be good if they're getting a second one, and heard from their friends it was good, that's when they finally decided to go back and check out the others.
Exactly. And this really is massive numbers. When you see 1.6 billion minutes watched, that's what we call success. And so a lot of times when we are looking at the Disney Plus shows, for example, we'll see them topping out at maybe 700 million minutes watched. And that's why when folks out there say, well, isn't that a success? And we say, well, what's the ROI on this? I mean, Disney is spending just tremendous amounts of funds on these shows, and they're getting
certainly
700 million.
More than they did on Reacher.
Right. Meanwhile, Prime Video, Jeff Bezos spending substantially less on Reacher, we would suspect, and getting 1.6, almost 1.7 billion minutes watched. You can see why that's a categorically different return on investment.
I mentioned
enjoys.
the point about the previous season because I don't think anybody who turned on, or nowhere near as many, let's say this, who turned on, say, a season 2 of Loki said, oh, I got to go back and watch all the old ones because I love it so much. Because obviously people didn't love it so much, and the same with the other shows.
And that's a shame, and that actually segues perfectly, Lou, because Loki in season 1, the first 2 episodes, I thought were some of the best television that I had seen in a long time. The finale was fine. The middle was bogged down utterly with non-stop woke ideology.
And the question becomes, who goes back, who gets to the end if the middle sucks? People
exactly.
give up. People give up.
these companies have been hiring saboteurs, people who want to promulgate their message, the narrative, the message, right? They want to put in modern, highly specific political messaging, propagandizing these shows, using them as vehicles for their own beliefs. And number one, it makes those shows be extremely aged in just a few years. But number two, it drives away audiences. And
Well,
so,
number
yeah,
three, the management at Amazon is learning lessons from this, and Disney isn't.
correct. And that
And
may be because of who's at the top of Amazon.
well,
You know,
and I read up on the history of how they decided to get into this Lord of the Rings.
Prime Video.
That Bezos is a major Tolkien fan, and of course loved the original movies. And had they gone on and made all the seasons they planned on making, this was going to be a $1 billion with a B dollar proposition to do this thing. And they paid a big chunk for the rights, but they made it. It didn't work. They said, "Oops, stop." Doesn't happen over at Disney, does it? Because to admit
Correct.
you made a mistake is to admit that Bob is not omnipotent,
And for
we
all the
can't have
flaws,
that.
for all the flaws of a Jeff Bezos, he's going to be looking at this as a businessman versus Iger, who is looking at this as a way to build his legacy.
And let me add one more factor to this. The previously amazingly longest running character in streaming Amazon product, Bosch. And what happened when they did 8 seasons of Bosch? They said, you know what? These have been great, but he's now officially out of the police force in the story. Let's make a second series called Bosch Legacy that carries on from there about his daughter and him and this defense attorney. But let's put it on freebie with ads. Well, now Amazon is getting ads. They cut out the middleman on the next one. You see what I'm saying?
Right? I see what you're saying.
But they
Very
learned
savvy.
their lessons.
Yes, very savvy. Now let's read about this because what's happening now is that Amazon Prime Video, great success, simultaneously cutting the fat. We'll talk about what we think that fat is, although we take no joy in anyone losing their jobs. This is happening at the same time that other companies are cutting as well. The tech giants seem to be cutting significantly, paring down their workforce. And Disney, that announcement of Pixar cutting jobs is tremendous because when Disney announced the Pixar cuts, we're talking about 300 plus layoffs for a studio that has 1,300. You're talking about cutting to the marrow at that point, and they made that announcement on the same day that Pixar puts a movie in theaters, that being Soul.
Yeah.
Wow, what a gut punch. But here we go.
And notice what it says in that headline. Part of this Amazon thing is also cutting Twitch, which they've already cut back what they thought was to the bone last year. And they spent a lot of money to buy Twitch in 2014, and it's never shown a profit.
True. Amazon will lay off several hundred across Prime Video, Amazon MGM Studios, and 500 cut at Twitch. Here's the article. Amazon is laying off several hundred employees at Prime Video and Amazon MGM Studios. Additionally, 500 employees, or 35% of the workforce, that's Pixar level numbers, are being let go at Amazon-owned live stream platform Twitch. This is a difficult decision to make, and one that my leadership team and I do not take lightly, the company's entertainment chief, Mike Hopkins, wrote in an email to staff Wednesday. It is hard to say goodbye to talented Amazonians who've made meaningful contributions on behalf of our customers, team, and business. Thank you for your dedication and work. To help with the transition, we are providing packages that include a separation payment, transitional benefits as applicable by country, and external job placement support.
Which is
Hopkins
a pretty
says
standard.
Amazon,
That's a pretty standard package for anybody.
Absolutely.
It's nothing special. It's good,
Absolutely.
but it's nothing special.
Hopkins says Amazon will begin informing colleagues who are impacted by the studio layoffs Wednesday morning, yada, yada, yada. Now, these layoffs are the first to hit the divisions in the new year, but the departments have been affected on a rolling basis in the wake of the 2022 close of Amazon's acquisition of MGM, as well as economic downturn and the writers and actors strikes. In 2023, approximately 1,800 cuts hit Amazon as a whole. Now, here's my question to you, Mr. Ghost, and that is that this brings up the idea that the strikes have hurt the people who were striking, and now Amazon is cutting jobs. I don't know if that is true. That's what this is suggesting, at least implicitly.
Well, the official explanation is we hired a lot of extra people during COVID because more people were staying home and not going to the movies, and we thought we needed them. But now we realized, oops, no, they're not streaming our stuff either, so we don't need so many. I don't know if that's 100% true or if that's cover. As far as the strikes, it certainly cut down on production, but if they were anticipating on ramping it back up, they would need these people to do it in theory. So
Well,
what I
is it
think
also
it
true
means,
that the people coming back now would receive more money after the strikes?
well, sure, everybody would get a little bit more, but a lot of these people are administrative people that aren't in the guilds anyway. I don't think this is a lot of writers and directors and actors as much as it is management people of some kind or another, which brings up the general course of things in the economy. You know what? Back before I left LA, Amazon had a pretty darn huge investment that they made in a big hurry around Santa Monica in office space and office buildings that they built for specifically this. I bet you those are going to empty out too, just like all the other office centers of our nation are emptying out as people more work from home or have less people on the payroll. So there's that ripple. But I don't think it's as big a deal as far as the strikes. They might use that, but like I say, had they planned on, well, but the strike's over and now we're going to go back to work, you need the people. You don't need the people if, and here is the thing I think this is. Amazon is saying to themselves, we can do better buying product, licensing product from other people and have them take the risk of making it than we can making it all in-house. You know, there's a certain amount of prestige factor of, we're really a studio too. But I think it was when we talked recently that I noted that there were, I'm trying to think if it was Amazon or, no, it was Netflix when we talked about Netflix. But of all the movies that I get sent to screen to pick out what I think should get the awards, there were 4, count them 4, from Netflix. Netflix isn't producing a zillion movies, and the ones that they're putting in the theaters first to qualify as awards, that's a loss leader to advertise for their streaming. So Amazon is, again, learning that lesson too. They're saying, I don't think we have to spend all this money to produce it ourselves when we can get somebody else to do it or do it in partnership and share the risk better and make better use of our money. The other thing to notice in Google's layoffs, you know what isn't laying off a single person? Their server farms.
I was going to say, well, I hope it's the some of these HR departments that are destroying their own companies that are losing.
Certainly when they lay these people off, the HR people will go with them because they have nobody to hire anymore and nobody to vet anymore.
And but again, we take no joy in people
Amazon
losing their
Web
job.
Services and Google Cloud are not at all impacted by this.
Right, because they're winners, and
it
turns out that in the world there are realities. And we have been living in this postmodern sort of malaise, this haze, where we're told that, you can go woke and the numbers can decline and the economy doesn't matter because the message reigns supreme. And that is turning out to be absolutely untrue. You talked about prestige and about the spending all this money to get the prestige and it may not be worth it. It's definitely not worth it if you're Amazon and you're spending over $1 billion and you've got articles such as this coming out on December 18th.
What about all the other things they spend money on too? They suddenly said, we tried it. We tried to be Disney or Warner Brothers or all these big studios, and guess what? It don't work no more.
Actually, what I would say is they unintentionally, I'm not sure that Bezos stepped into wanting to do Lord of the Rings with the idea that he wanted to be like Disney. But because of the talent that was brought on board, that's what they did. They turned this into modern Disney production. You're
absolutely right. I mean, I'm saying he might have done it thinking, well, all those big Marvel movies and the indie movies before these recent disasters, in that sense, wanted to emulate them, but in the process, emulated their hiring practices and their wokeness too.
Right. And so what I think is happening here is I think that across the board now we are watching the utter decline of DEI in entertainment. I don't want to get too optimistic here, and I'm not taking joy in anybody's losses, but I do think that these companies are, you can't look at Pixar and see it any other way, I don't think.
Yeah.
Pixar has intentionally done what it took to make themselves divisive, to put themselves in a position to propagandize children's entertainment. And Pixar, don't forget, folks, Pixar was a major player in helping Iger get back in charge of Disney. It was Pixar that took on Bob Chapek directly when there was the Shadow campaign. And yet, in spite of what should have been built-in favoritism at that point, right, you have Pixar losing a huge number of its workforce in front of 3 movies coming out in theaters, in front of Inside Out being released in theaters. It doesn't matter. They're cutting the jobs. And I think they've reached that threshold where they can no longer protect these ideologues.
Here's the other thing. You and Valiant have both talked about there's no point in having 2 complete administrative animation things. You don't need it. That theoretically some of the Pixar stuff will still happen, but it will happen under the aegis of Disney Animation. Well, what has Disney done that they have also now done with Marvel and Indie and everything else? The Pixar brand, which used to mean so much, has been degraded by this. to the point where
Exactly.
you would think they'd keep that brand as something co-equal with Walt Disney Animation. Nope. I bet it goes away.
Meanwhile, Reacher, which there's no world in which you can tell me that Reacher has the potential to reach an audience the size that Lord of the Rings has in terms of franchise potency. But they made Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, impotent with their divisive message, with their DEI stuff, their ESG stuff, with all of this modern wokeisms. And so Reacher, which has a far inferior reach, to be a little bit humorous there, it still is dominating Lord of the Rings because it threw away the divisiveness. It knows its demographic it's aiming for, and it's doing it without being subverted by the message.
And I'll tell you what number I would love to see if I were a fly on the wall in certain areas. Reacher is an all-American product. The movies, the book, certainly, even though the guy that wrote it is English, it was him doing an American character and story. Therefore, I wonder, as the Reacher TV show goes out through Amazon internationally, if the translated book sales for the Reacher books will go way up in places they never penetrated before because they were relatively distant from and unaware of the character.
Well, after Godzilla -1, I would suspect that will absolutely happen. Because
I would love to
what
see
we've
the
already
sales
seen.
on this in France and in Germany and all over the world, in the Orient certainly, once these books get out there. Because, when you look at the major novelists of our era, guys like Ludlum and the rest of them, they're in 30 languages or 40 languages and all over the world. I doubt Reacher was. But now...
No, I agree with you, and I think there's something to be said about this authenticity.
It's the old thing that Disney used to do so well of the movie becomes the ride, becomes the merch, becomes the show on the cruise ship, becomes the hotel theming. That whole, good internecine product revolution, or revolving, I should say. This could do that very, very easily.
I think we're in a new... Go ahead.
As I mentioned, the longest running character in the history of streaming is Harry Bosch.
There you go. Well, I think there's something to be said when we're in a time now in 2024, after all of the cheerleading of all of the divisiveness, an election year, by the way, all across the world.
Yep.
We are watching as companies eliminate the opportunities to divide even more. I'm not saying that that's going to hold. I'm not saying that 2024 is going to be a peaceful time. But what I am suggesting is we just watched Star Wars have a female director come out and say, it's time for a woman to finally shape Star Wars. And Disney said, no. Disney said, Jon Favreau is going to shape Star Wars in 2024, and he's going to do it with 2 male characters. I'm not advocating for male or female characters. I'm saying that's what Disney said. Literally,
Right.
Disney said it through their actions. And we're watching this continue now in all of these other companies where, we just had Top Gun 3 announced. We'll be covering that on the channel soon. That is absolutely a play to go back to, again, a movie that was all about the paternal spirit with the Top Gun movies. We're getting a trilogy now, and I just see this over and over. It seems to me we're never going to get an explicit mea culpa, but Hollywood seems to be waking up to the fact that they have to get away from that which is killing them, and that which is killing them is woke.
If they want to sell stock eventually, yes, they do.
Right, and eventually the market did win.
Let's put it this way. I do not think we can expect to see Jon Favreau in a bibbidi-bobbidi dress. I do not think that's about to happen, okay?
I don't know. He's over at Disney. He better be checking his contract to see what he's obligated to do.
I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a specific exclusionary clause in his contract about any of this stuff, because he could write his own ticket, and I bet he has.
That's
so,
right.
And the other interesting thing about this is the layoffs. You know what else they've been laying off at Amazon and Google? The people associated with those little boxes on your desk.
The little boxes on our desks.
I don't want to
Explain that
mention
the
her
audience.
name. She'll hear me. She's sitting right here. Starts with an A. It has an X in it. or Google's equivalent. You know why? Because a year ago they announced, we thought we were going to make a lot of revenue from this. We thought people were going to use this thing to reorder products through Amazon or to redo. They said people are using it for the two things that yours truly used it for: kitchen timers and the weather.
Well, Mr. Ghost, on behalf of tens of thousands of people watching this video, thank you for not saying that name, because all of their devices, all of their little boxes.
Well, I remember when that first started happening. Hell no, I'm not going to mention her. I refer to her like I refer to the GPS in the car. But that's the thing. And now, by the way, it's gotten much more aggressive about searching and selling. When it tells you, I have a thing called notification where it says, one notification, your order from Amazon Shopping will arrive today. And then it used to just say that. Now it says, and by the way, you might be running out of, wouldn't you like to order this too? Just say yes, and I'll make it happen, baby. And it still isn't working.
And by the way, folks, if you've enjoyed this video, you might think about clicking the like button to get more videos just like this.
There you go. But
share, subscribe.
Last time I checked, a human being saying it, although here we are, two doppelgangers on screen. But
that's right. Doppelganging away against DEI.
Yeah.
Folks, drop a comment down below. Join us and share your thoughts. And Mr. Ghost, thank you for stopping by and talking about potentially, folks, we're not getting our hopes up, but potentially this is the beginning of the big turn as Hollywood has learned the lesson and they have to make money. They just, we've talked about it before. Hollywood in decline, theaters on the edge of collapse, international studios having a chance to take over. It looks like they're figuring it out now.
I think this is a new version, a Hollywood version of Margaret Thatcher's famous quote, and that would be, in this version, sooner or later...
They're going to hate that you compared them to Margaret Thatcher.
Of course they are, but, she said about socialism that sooner or later you run out of other people's money. Well, in this case, it's sooner or later you run out of woke people's money.
They didn't have much to begin with.
Exactly.
All right, folks, that's it for us. We hope you had a good one. Hope you have a great weekend. Stay warm out there. So much of North America covered in snow. Get out there and ski and snowboard, sled, and have fun with the kiddos. Folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having
fun.
Huh. Hey, Floral. I just wanted to let you know I have a New Year's resolution.
Okay.
Although, I don't want to say it. It might be like a wish. If I speak it, I'll break it.
Usually a resolution is spoken out loud so you can be held accountable to it. Like, my resolution is to go to thatparkplace.com and be ready to see its new facelift, and to make sure I'm always subscribed to guys like Jonas and Pro, Culture Casino, Lorena Creole, John Trent, all of them.
Well, I actually got Slade Wilson to also make a resolution.
What's that?
I'd get in too much trouble if I repeated it. He took it way further than I feel comfortable repeating.
Well, that's probably a good call. But, what's yours?
It's not to say anything mean about Jonas.
How do you plan to do that? You're an idiot.